How many of us were raised and heard things like money doesn't go on trees, pinch your pennies, save for a rainy day, or we can't afford it? How many of us said that? Everybody, right? When you say we can't afford it, it's negative and it kind of closes your mind. You want to turn off the lights and get under the
I want to
covers.
say that my son is listening to this with me as he goes to sleep. An 11-year-old is listening to Rich Dad Poor Dad, the synopsis part, so it's a little quicker to go. And by the way, I just want to share something. I'm going to feel a little guilty if I don't say it to you, but I have bought your books and scratched out the W and the O, so it's like it's talking to a man. So it says "Think Grow Rich for Men." I just scratch out the WO, just so you know.
That's my office. And so I came into my office and this guy was sitting in my desk chair waiting for me. And it was love at first sight, electric handshake. And we've basically been together ever since, even though he was on the opposite side of the lawsuit. Self, faith in what you're doing, faith that you will succeed, and faith that it truly will happen. And so I use this formula in every interview, every seminar, with every client to have the right associations. And so, yeah, you go to um, personalsuccessequation.com to get the worksheet.
We'll make that link available. All right, we are live. This is the Dr. Smiley Show, and I am so honored to have Sharon Lechter here. She's someone that I see from afar that I never knew I'd get to have an intimate conversation with, to say thank you for all the good you do in the world. The frequency at how many times we've seen each other, and the fact that you'll turn and say, "How are you?" means a lot to me. You remember everybody, and I just want to say this is going to be a deep conversation that I'll learn a lot, but I hope my audience learns to play bigger and to be inspired to do some of the cool things you've done in your life. So, how are you, Sharon?
I am fantastic, Ken. Delighted to be with you and looking forward to our time together.
Thank you. As you know, red is a good color, and black. I did the red and a little bit of blue. I didn't have the black shirt underneath. So you have quite a background behind you.
I've been around a long time, Ken, but yes, I've been, one of the things is when you have that definiteness of purpose, it's easy to focus on it and keep going. And sometimes you get off track, but then you remember why you're doing what you're doing and you get back on.
Well, this show is about honoring, if God wills it, 365 people that I have in a Rolodex that I just can't believe. I sometimes pinch myself and say, wow, I've met these people not just once, but several times. And I want to do a book this year that says these are people that if you follow them, you'll have a better life, you'll learn more, and you'll just enjoy playing bigger and have a better attitude about it. And I think I want to share with you the beginning of the show the thing I just really respect and admire about you the most, and that is you are certainly a person of resilience. I have heard stories of all the things you've created, but more importantly, I've heard that out of those creations, sometimes things just don't work out as well as you'd like them to, and you bounce back with something bigger and better. So I just want to acknowledge you for that first and foremost.
Thank you, Ken. And I think, everybody, we all have successes and we all have those learning opportunities. And the issue is to know that you're on earth for a reason. And so those setbacks typically just mean that they're preparing you for a different door to open for your future.
Well, we're going to learn, and the audience is going to learn some of the big things you've created in the world that they know the name or they know what it is, but they didn't know, or they didn't know it even existed, and they can pick it up and it'll change their life. So, I'd like to start off with where you're born and what happened, perhaps in your childhood, that caused you to be who you are today.
Well, thanks, Kenya. I was actually born in San Diego. My dad was in the Navy, so I don't remember it. We were only there for the first 6 months, but I still have this affinity to San Diego. In fact, I do most of my writing over there. But my early years were in Great Lakes, Illinois, where my dad retired from the Navy there. He ran the engineering school, moved to Florida. So I really grew up in Florida. That's most of my memories are there. And just had parents, I kept asking them, what did you do that gave me this drive? I'd like to bottle it, be an instant billionaire. But they never told me to do my homework. They just expected it to get done. And so I just built this desire to make sure I got my work done. I did what I needed to do, had to help with cooking and cleaning, but always with parents who told me I could do anything I wanted to. And this was long before discrimination against women. It was just, if I wanted something, I knew I had to work harder to get it. And I still feel that way today. That is, regardless of color of your skin or your gender, you can achieve success if you just focus and do what you need to achieve that result.
And you're kind of, in my opinion, like the Martha Stewart of personal development. You you have opened the doors and changed the dynamics of how big you can play. And that comment you just said about if you get bottle driven. So what I heard is that your parents said the same thing my mom said specifically, which is why I honor women and why I'm a tribute to my mom, which is you can do anything. And when you have someone say you can do anything, there's no blockage, there's no constraints. And also it's forgiveness that when you can't, you believe you can again.
Exactly. And I think in contrast to how I was raised, if I made a mistake, I had to figure out how to get through it. Today, so many parents put their kids in bubbles. They don't want them to have any adversity. And it's really a disservice to the children because they don't learn resilience. They don't learn how to work towards a goal and achieve it, which gives them the initiative and the self-confidence to keep moving forward. And I think it's a real tragedy today when I see all these kids who, everybody gets a trophy and, um, mom goes to battle for them. And it's something that we need to let our kids learn from failing and getting back up and achieving what they want.
Well, it's quite a testament. You know, and I know the people that are in stages that we've seen are on stage, command the stage, and take on things that are almost impossible. They had a very similar story. They had to figure it out. They were children with horrible backgrounds or horrible challenges. And I mean, even take Frank Shankowitz, who had a movie made about him about that exact thing, is it is about your enabling the fact that they become helpless.
Yeah,
It's
I mean, you can have a victim mentality or you can have a victor mentality. You say, okay, that happened. And so many times when we make a mistake or we have a failure, we let it define us. I'm a failure. No, you're not a failure. You just had a bump in the road. And so instead of looking at it as a definition and we carry it around on our like an old sack of potatoes, consider it as an occurrence. It happened. Okay, that happened. I don't know anybody today that's a huge success that hasn't had a few learning opportunities along the way. And so I use the analogy, you're the CEO of your own life. You're in the driver's seat. You have your hands on the steering wheel, your foot on the accelerator, and huge windshield because you can go anywhere you want to. There are no barriers. You can figure out where you want to go. But the rear view mirror is very small because you're just supposed to learn from the past and not let it hold you back. And when something happens, stick it in the passenger seat. Okay, what am I supposed to learn from you? Got it. Kick it out the door and keep going. And I think as a general proposition, men are better at doing that than women. We tend to hold on to that negativity. And that's something that I want women to recognize. And I tell people, we all have messes in our life, whether they were traumatic personal things or business things. Take that mess and turn it into your message because there are other people going through the same thing. And that message can become your mission, your definite purpose. And you, along the way, will become someone else's miracle.
So why do you think women hold on to it more? I know why men don't. We can't remember it. We just forget everything.
Well, men are much more decisive, so they're more like, okay, that happened next. And women are excellent problem solvers. But that means we continually think about something. We're going, well, what if this happens or that happens? So we tend to hold on to it. We also have this almost societal built-in level of guilt. Everything, worry. Women tend to worry more than men do. And my definition of worry, Ken, is to pray for what you do not want. Think about that.
I love when you say that.
We're focusing on the negative. And if you've watched The Secret or read the book Think and Grow Rich, the law of attraction is alive and well. And when you're focusing on a potential negative outcome, it becomes a reality. So that definition really helped me in my life because my mother was the queen of worry and I came back by it naturally. And I've caught myself and I said, okay, so when I'm thinking, worried about something that's negative, I stop and retool my thought process to something that I do want to have happen. And it really is magical because then your subconscious is thinking of the positive, not the negative, and you start attracting positive results. And it's really important because all of us as human beings, we can control three things: our thoughts, our words, our actions, and they are all interrelated. But it starts with your thoughts. So if you're worried about stuff or you're thinking negative, you are creating a negative atmosphere in your subconscious. And it's like when it relates to money, which obviously is part of my definite purpose, getting people financially secure. How many of us were raised and heard things like money doesn't go on trees, pinch your pennies, save for a rainy day, or we can't afford it. How many of us said that? Everybody, right? When you say we can't afford it, it's negative and it kind of closes your mind. You want to turn off the lights and get under the covers. And so I say, again, your words, your thoughts. Instead of asking yourself, saying I can't afford it, ask yourself, how can I afford it? Do you feel the difference? When you say, how can I afford it? You actually trigger your subconscious mind and it goes to work thinking about ways you can afford what you want. And as an entrepreneurial trigger, that question gets you thinking and become creative. And that is what allows you to conquer whatever it is you're looking to do, is by allowing yourself the world of possibility instead of the world of impossibility.
So I have a diagram to show you that I think you'll get a kick out of. It's something I saw a monk put on, and it was actually YouTube saying the most powerful 5-letter word in the world is smile. But he had a diagram in there. But I want to say the thing that saddens me more about what you shared is not just that you believe it or you say it. It's that if you have children present, especially your own children, they say, "Oh, that's the way it is." It becomes law at that point.
Yeah, and that's, I normally follow up with exactly that kind of concept because I say, we say it to ourselves, but we also say it to our children.
Mhm.
And it is negative and it's repeating that scarcity mindset into your children. And so I say, ask your children, Johnny, Mary, you want that? How can you afford it? And I tell you, children get very creative on how they can earn the money, but allow them to earn it as long as it's legal. Allow them to earn it, allow them to get what they want, celebrate with them, because the greatest reward is you see that self-confidence grow in that child. And once a child knows how to make money on their own, there's no stopping them. And it's really important that we empower our children to be in charge of their own destiny.
Well, I'd certainly like my son to be able to adopt you as a grandma or an aunt or something because you definitely.
I call them my grandchildren in love, so he's welcome.
Or do you have kids?
Yes, we have three. One is the one that we lost 12 years ago, but we have two children. Both have been married for 20 years, and we have four grandchildren.
That's fantastic. Well, with your permission, I'm going to just show you really quickly this diagram that I'll send to you later, if you'd like.
Sure.
So it's the why worry diagram. So do you have a problem in life? No, then why worry? Do you have a problem in life? Yes. Can you do something about it? No, then why worry? And do you have a problem in life? Yes. Can you do something about it? Yes.
I
Then
love that. Yes, you'll have to send that to me. I love that.
yeah. In fact, I'll send you my newest book. So speaking of books, you've done a few.
28. I'm working on number 29.
29. What is the name of that one?
Well, so the working title is Grace, Living in Grace. And it's more autobiographical, but it's also talking about what we've been talking about, understanding the choices we make. And sometimes you have to stand in your own power and make a choice that at the time may not seem reasonable, but it's the right one for you. And how to live in a world of positivity.
So this is unusual, but I don't want people to go through the show saying, well, what else has she written? So we're going to stop here for a second. You've done 28 books. Here's what I'd like you to consider. If people were saying, I want my 2025 to be better, and there's 10 more months left in the year, I'd like to buy 10 books by Sharon. You don't have to put them in order, but which would be the 10 you're most proud of, or do you think would be most impactful of the 28?
Well, I think some of my most recent books are probably the best. And one of them is Outwitting the Devil. It's for anybody that really is frustrated with their life. They don't know what to do. They're shackled with fear. Definitely, it has been a huge success, and it really particularly helping the younger generation. It's a little in your face. It was written by Napoleon Hill in 1938 and hidden away for 73 years. So I had the honor of bringing it out and annotating it, comparing 1938 to when we released it. And it's a magical book. And the audio book is fantastic because I made them get two different actors. So it's like a radio drama, not just an regular audio book. And then my most recent book is How Money Works for Women. And it is a four-color book, almost like a graphic novel. I have 9 avatars, women from every decade of life from 19 to 86. And we talk about the various things that happen to women financially along the way. You know, from getting married, from starting a business, having a business that you have to adjust because you have a special needs child, and how you find support and resources. Having to start your life over because you leave an abusive marriage with 2 children. All of these things that happen in real life. Then one 25-year marriage, looking forward to retirement, the husband comes home and is trading you in for a younger model, and you've not established your own credit. These are all things that happen to us, and it's really important. Another woman, she has her father move back in and her adult son move back in. These are honest to goodness things that women need to understand how to navigate, and also to realize they're not alone. So I'm
Hmm.
very proud of that one. And then, of course, Think and Grow Rich for Women is another wonderful book for women. It follows the same chapter outline as the original Think and Grow Rich. But when Napoleon Hill wrote Think and Grow Rich, there were no women in business. So I'm looking at those same principles through the eyes of successful business women. And of course, I did the whole 15 books in the Rich Dad series. I was Robert's partner in that company, and we co-authored 15 books. And so obviously those are more fundamental from a standpoint of investing, but Cash Flow Quadrant is a wonderful one for people to understand the mindset around money. I don't know how many I've just named, but
You're doing good.
I,
You've done 4, and I just want to say that my son is listening to this with me as he goes to sleep. An 11-year-old is listening to Rich Dad Poor Dad, the synopsis part, so it's a little quicker to go. And by the way, I just want to share something. I'm going to feel a little guilty if I don't say it to you, but I have bought your books and scratched out the W and the O, so it's like it's talking to a man. So it says "Think Grow Rich for Men." I just scratch out the WO, just so you know.
That's fine. That's fine. Because the messaging is the same. You know, I resisted doing anything specific for women for most of my career because I grew up in the midst of men. And I really truly believe the steps to success are the same for men and women. But in my years of experience, I came to realize while the steps to success are the same, men and women tend to approach them very differently. And so I wanted to speak to women from women's voices so that they could relate and say, if she can do this, so can I.
That's beautiful. So you named about 4, and I invite you to name a couple more if you'd like. But what was your first book?
Well, my first book was Rich Dad Poor Dad, obviously the
Was it?
biggest blockbuster there is. Well, before that, I started and created the talking children's book industry. So I wrote many books in that series, books that had the sound strips down the side, right?
Really?
And we started that industry back in 1987. So those were my first books, but the first adult book was Rich Dad Poor Dad. And then we formed a company around it, and we wrote 15 books together in that series. And then I was asked to step in and help revitalize Napoleon Hill's teachings. I thought Rich Dad was my legacy. I really did, Ken. I think, and so it's like I made the decision to leave. This is one of those times where you make a decision that's right for you. People thought I was crazy, but it was the right thing for me to do, and I don't regret it. But I didn't know what was next because I thought I was going to be shepherding Rich Dad forever. And that's when I got the call from the president asking me to be on the first President's Advisory Council. I wouldn't have had that call had I still been at Rich Dad. And then in March of '08, I got the call from Don Green of the Napoleon Hill Foundation asking me to help revitalize the teachings of Napoleon Hill. It was a dying brand. People didn't know him or didn't know the books. So I had the honor of stepping in and help really putting all that back on the map and supporting it. And my first book was 3 Feet from Gold. Great book. It was wonderful. Did it with a Greg Reed about perseverance, getting through the tough times. We all have valleys. And so some people stop and let it disable them. Others persevere. And that's a very important thing. And then all the books that I wrote with Napoleon Hill Foundation are fantastic. And then I wrote Exit Rich, which is with Inc. magazine. And for any business owner, whether you plan on selling your business or not, Exit Rich talks to you and shares the components of building not just a successful business, but one that's scalable and saleable, whether you sell it or not. It's really important. It's a way to build value into your business, to make it stronger, and to be able to serve more people successfully and help it expand even during economic downturns.
So I've heard this over and over again on my show, which is people that have done 20 or more books. And they say something very similar to what you said, which is my best book is the book I just did. And I think there's mastery in everything, but I think a lot of people don't realize that when they do their first book, they're under this false delusion that that book is going to change the world and it's going to be their best book. And it's just like what you said. It's a brick, I think, that is growing you so you can actually communicate and master your writing, but also master your message. So I just wanted to have you encourage people to not only write a book, but to write many books, because it is a journey.
Yeah, and my answer to that question is usually the next one. What's your favorite book? The next one, the one I'm working on. And my favorite books change based on who's asking the question and what's happening in their life. Obviously, if you ask a question, I'm not going to tell you to read Think Grows for Women or How Money Works for Women. But if it's a young person who's kind of struggling with who they are, I'm going to recommend Outwitting the Devil. And so it really, my books cover an array of topics, but all aligned to finding yourself and controlling your thoughts, your words, and your actions.
That's a phenomenal point on top of everything else you said, because I wrote a book on comedy, which is probably horrible, but I wrote a book on travel. And so whoever I'm talking to, I know which book would be the best book to give them. It's like having an arsenal of gifts. You can say, oh, this one's the best one for you. So that's pretty cool. All right. So onward and upward with your story. So where did you go to college, and when did you have some epiphanies that you would be who you are now?
I love that question. I went to high school in Orlando, Florida, and then I went to Florida State University for my accounting degree. And when I was my eighth grade English teacher told me that I would be a famous writer. I was on a track for math and science all the way, but she said, you're going to be a famous writer. I thought she was crazy. And then when I'm in college, my sorority house mother said, you're going to be a famous speaker on stage. I thought she was crazy. But here I am. It's kind of an interesting thing. And the epiphany came to me when I was 25, and I was one of the very first women in public accounting. I think there was only 4 of us in the Southeast United States. And so I was doing auditing in little towns in Georgia. So you talk about not being well received as a woman. It was pretty interesting. But I fought through and I did what I needed to do, and just focused on getting the job done. But at 25, I was told I was qualified to go to top manager position, which was a very fast track for anyone. And my senior partner said, well, we're going to give you the money. We just can't give you the title because it'll upset the guys who started with you.
Hmm.
oh, you don't know me at all. That's crazy. And at the same time, I had a client offering me to start an save an entrepreneurial company out of bankruptcy. And I still remember going back to my condo and doing the old pros and cons, because this was long before PCs, long before cell phones, the old yellow legal pad, if you remember those pros and cons. And it didn't help me a bit. I could argue both sides, but my hand took off across the top of the page and said, why not? And that, Ken, is still my mantra today. Why not solve a problem or serve a need? Why not go the path less traveled? Why not follow what your purpose is? And that whole exercise made me realize that I am a control freak. I like to control my own life. I did not like being an employee working 80 hours a week and not knowing when I would have free time. And so you learn a lot about yourself. And I think it's really important for people to think of themselves first. Self-care usually is at the end of the list. And for me, it certainly was until much later in life. But I would be miserable if I'd stayed there. Would I have been successful? You bet. I absolutely would have been. I have no doubt about that. And the decision I made to leave, worst business decision of my life. I was there for a couple of weeks and found all kinds of corruption. But had I not made that mistake, that decision, I wouldn't have met Michael Lechter. And we're on 44 years. This year will be 45 years of marriage. And so I always tell people, as Napoleon Hill says, every adversity, every mistake brings with it a seed of equal or greater benefit. My worst business mistake provided me my best life decision.
Hmm.
So I don't regret having been through that. I learned a lot. And you take that with you into the future. Do a little bit more due diligence before you make these business decisions. But I'm glad I made that mistake because I have a wonderful marriage as a result of it.
That brings all kinds of questions. So let's see if I can remember them all. Okay. So one, we'll go with the most recent. So how'd you meet Michael?
We met because had gone to this company. It was up in Gonick, New Hampshire, and it had been in bankruptcy. So there was a lot of litigation, and I was with the new team who bought it, and they had a group of attorneys up doing due diligence, we call it discovery. And they waited for me to get back because I had gone away for a couple of days because that was when I had discovered all this corruption. I said, oh my gosh, now what am I going to do with my life? Crazy. Newly minted CPA, and I'm risking it right now. So they waited for me to get back, and they needed to do discovery in my files in my office. And so I came into my office, and this guy was sitting in my desk chair waiting for me. And it was love at first sight, electric handshake. And we've basically been together ever since, even though he was on the opposite side of a lawsuit.
Beautiful. Okay. So you said there were some teachers that made some proclamations, a college teacher, I believe, and a middle school. Is that correct? And did you ever go back to them and ask them how they knew or even thank them?
They were both older at the time, so they weren't around anymore.
So it's interesting because
but my high school did bring me back and put me into their Hall of Fame. So,
well, I think it's amazing the power a teacher has when they say something like that as a prediction, and they either know it or they just believe it, and because they believe it so much, it becomes a knowing. But if you hadn't heard that, it's so interesting. You went into accounting when you had the creative side of what it is to speak and to write. What caused you to have that divide? I mean, isn't accounting like
I'm so glad you asked that question, Kid. Most people don't. It was really frustrating most of my life because I had this conservative accountant brain fighting this entrepreneurial take a risk brain. And I really was neurotic. It was like, oh, I'd argue with myself subconsciously all the time. But it wasn't until I moved to Arizona and met Kathy Colby. She's a founder, Colby test. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but I took it probably 25 or not 30 years ago. And it gave me such definition because my natural ability is the entrepreneur, take the risk. My cognitive ability, what I trained myself in, was being the accountant, naysayer, basically, the risk averse. And by understanding where those opposing forces came from, I could accept it and understand it more. And I think it's really important for us to get to know ourselves better because it helps explain a lot of the struggles that we go through in our mind.
Are you ambidextrous?
No,
And
funny you should ask. I just had surgery on my right arm yesterday. So for the last 2 days, I've been trying to do everything with my left arm and it had not to great success.
but we are talking about you exercising both hemispheres of the brain, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And most people don't have the sharpness of the accounting side or the analytical side, and they go into business and they wonder why it's not working.
That's right. And it's very important. There's a very huge topic in my book, Exit Rich, because it's very important for you to know your numbers. You don't have to become an accountant, but you need to understand how to read a financial statement. And you need to make sure you have a competent accountant to help you with making sure you stay on top of your numbers.
Yeah, I mean, hindsight is everything, right? So if I had it to do over again, certainly I wish I would have known you when I started my first business, but I did forego the accounting expenses and the legal expenses. And sure enough, it was a very hard road. It's a 7-year road instead of a 1-year road on making it work. Because inevitably, you do have to get it all together. You have to get it all together.
I love it. People say, well, I can't afford an attorney. It's too expensive. And I go, you can't not afford an attorney because what you might have to spend $10,000 for today, if you don't spend that, it may cost you several $100,000 in 10 years. So
Yeah, it's how big do you want to go on the journey? If you're not going to go that long, then I guess you don't need an accountant, or because you're just going to take your lumps and get out. But if you're going to go the long road, you're 100% correct. It's money saved. And by the way, they pay for themselves because when you win them over with friendship on top of it all, they guide you into opportunities. That's the other thing that most people don't think.
most people, if you don't have a competent accountant and attorney, you really own a job, not a business, because you've not done what you need to create the foundation of that business.
Or worse, a hobby. And that's the worst. That's the lowest level. You own a
Yep.
hobby. Okay, so onwards with the development of who you are. So you were really happy with who you were pretty much all through your life. It sounds like it doesn't sound like you had any like breakdowns of I want to find out who I am. Can you share how you were just so able to?
Well, there have been major turning points in my life. Obviously, leaving public accounting was a huge one, and my developing my why not category mantra. Um, Going back into the corporate world, I was an officer in a life insurance company when we first got married back in Washington, D.C. And again, it was an exclamation point to me that was like, here I am back again as an employee. This is not what I want. And so I started my own tax practice, and then we founded the Talking Children's Book Company in Wisconsin. We moved there, and that
How'd you come
company.
up with that? How'd you come up with that idea?
Well, the inventor was a good friend of mine. We were both on the American Cancer Society board, and he had had a lifelong career, 23 years in sheet music. He was an incredible musician. But as part of it, he came up with this idea, and my husband helped him patent the idea. And just happened to have one. And so we started with this, and I tell people, we had this idea, but it was kids. It's hard to imagine, but dinosaur days, kids had no electronics, they had no screens.
Right.
And so we said, how can we get parents to trust us? And so we created the concept and did partnerships with Disney, Warner Brothers, Sesame Street, Marvel Comics, because parents trusted them and allowed us to explode this internationally. Our first year, we thought we were hot stuff with 1 million in sales. Then it went to 9 to 23 on the way to 52 million. And that's when we sold the company. And so understanding the importance of how to build and the foundation of the business and scale it, I learned so much through that effort. And I was able to take my knowledge and experience of how to do that and how not to do it, to Rich Dad and building Rich Dad around the world. And then again on how to expand the Napoleon Hill Foundation. And I use all of that education and skill in helping all of my top level mentoring clients. Because sometimes you don't know what you don't see. And it takes somebody who's been there, done that, and has that little experience. That's one of my greatest superpowers. I can see opportunities for people to have a new revenue stream, a new opportunity for them to find that next power of association that's going to help them scale their business. And that's the power of mentorship.
So I don't know if the audience caught what I caught, but it was that you met this person on the board of American Cancer. So let me say a couple of things, and you tell me if I'm going in the right direction here. So one is you show up to build community. You show up for things you believe in that don't have anything to do with business, but you want to make a difference. And so without you being on the board of the American Cancer, you wouldn't have met that person. Is that correct or not?
That's probably true. We were both on the opera board too. But yeah, my mother had two different mastectomies, two different bouts with cancer. And so it was my way of trying to stay in the know and to support the American Cancer Society. But yeah, we got to be very good friends, and he told me about it, and he was having trouble building the business because he was trying to internally finance it. And so I joined, to support him in growing that business around the world. And that's one of the things we teach our high-level mentoring clients is the power of association. And that power of association is so important. And people say, well, I don't know any rich people. Well, let's start with, do you have a passion? Animals, children, environment. Volunteer at a nonprofit in that field that you believe in. And if you get involved, you get on the board, you're going to start meeting millionaires and billionaires because they're going to share your passion for those things. And it's a way to expand your network. And I think in 3 Feet from Gold, I introduced the personal success equation. And I have a whole workbook that I created, personalsuccessequation.com. And it talks about, without numbers, it's an equation without numbers, so no panic. P plus T, passion plus talent. Now, my passion, you hear, do what you love, love what you do. Well, my passion came from anger that we weren't teaching kids about money in school. And my passion is as strong today as it was 35 years ago. Plus talent, I had years as a CPA and years in publishing. And so most of us combine those two things and think we have to do it on our own. It's all about us. But true success comes when you take that passion plus talent times power, the association. Who's on your team? Do you have people on your team who are strong where you are weak? Do you have the right mentor that helps you expand your business? Do you have the right advisors? Do you have the right joint ventures? Power of association is so important. Every bit of my success, I can point to power of association. And then times taking action. How many times do you know what you're supposed to do? You just don't do it. You procrastinate or you divert, even though you know you should be doing something. And then all of that is wrapped with a plus F for faith. Faith in yourself, faith in what you're doing, faith that you will succeed, and faith that it truly will happen. And so I use this formula in every interview, every seminar, with every client, because it's usually that power of association and that faith that need the most work. People have imposter syndrome, or they don't believe in themselves. They have that lack of confidence. And that F for faith is actually fear. And that's where outwitting the devil comes in so much. But that fear holds them back from achieving the success they deserve. And you have to deal with that fear first. And then the power of association, they go hand in hand. Because when you have the right people around you, and we all have bad days, all right? But they won't let you stay there.
Right.
The combination of the people around you, your mentor, the team, and your confidence in yourself are mutually supportive, are mutually destructive. If you don't have the right people around you, you're going to stay in fear.
Love that. I've been modifying this Mark Twain quote for the purpose of having my name next to Mark Twain. Okay, just to be clear. But he says the two most important days in your life are the day that you were born and the day you know why. And I add your A in there, then the day you take action on why. Because knowing why is not doing why.
Right.
And the other one I wanted to say is association. It's interesting. I'm going to be playing with this formula. So thank you for the formula. But I call it the power of proximity, in
Yeah.
that it's association is who you know. And obviously what you said about them, someone being not really serving their best interest, but someone that is in association with you doesn't allow that to last long, because they have solutions. They have real solutions, and they're a cheerleader for you as well. The proximity part that I think I'll just examine more later, but you can comment on it. It's how much time you're spending with these associations. And so,
Yeah.
and so if you're in a car with if I got to be in a car with you, for instance, and I got to drive 2 hours with you, that's going to be a game changer in how well, and even the show is going to change a lot of things. And the people that buy your book, they have a virtual proximity to you, but they're actually absorbing what you're gleaning and giving them as a gift. And I don't think people realize that when you're doing a book, it's the best you got. They're giving your life in $20. You're saying this is not the $10,000 consult or the 2,000. This is a $20 consult for free. You can use it as many times as you want. And I love what you were saying about the audible aspect. Could we go to 3 Feet from Gold, because that one was that's one of those books. When I read it, I actually had to read parts of it again because it was just so doggone good. Would you give like a 1 to 3 minute summary of why that book is so important, not just to read, but why it's such a principle of why people give up so often?
Well, it's 3 Feet from Gold. The title comes from the beginning story of Think and Grow Rich, where R.U. Darby went out west to discover gold. He discovered it right away. He was so excited. He came home, got a bunch of money that he borrowed to really set up the claim and start digging, get all the equipment. And so he started digging, and everything was great. And then it wasn't. He lost the gold vein and didn't have the right experts on his team, didn't have people around him. He just kind of threw up his hands, went into town, and the town's junk man bought the claim from him. And he went home with his tail between his legs, having spent money from his family and friends. Now, the junk man had been around for years in this environment and knew all of the top engineers. So he had the gold engineers go out and look at the claim, and they said, "This is easy." He went right through the gold vein. You go back 3 feet and you'll tap back into the vein, which he did. And it became, at that time, the largest gold discovery of the time. And R.U. Darby heard about it, and he could have like said, "I'm a failure." But he didn't. He said, "That was a huge mistake. I will never make it again." And he went on to build one of the largest insurance companies. So all of us, so many people stop 3 feet from gold. They don't have that energy and persistence to make it happen. And so in 3 Feet from Gold, we interview over 20 people that were faced with a problem and they persevered. Some of them were pretty significant problems. And their wisdom is priceless. Don't make decisions in a valley. How many times we make a decision when we're really sad and down that we regret later? Don't make decisions in a valley. Well, I say high emotion, low intelligence. It's so true. High emotion, low intelligence. That's why you need to have people around you. As a mentor, I don't have the same emotional commitment that my client does. And so I can see it with a less tinted vision of what they need to do. And that's why it's so important to have the right associations. And so, yeah, you go to personalsuccessequation.com to get the worksheet.
We'll make that link available. What is your purpose?
My purpose: elevate the financial well-being of humanity.
Beautiful. And I wanted to go into the 5 questions to kind of culminate the conversation. But is there anything I didn't cover that would be something that you'd want the audience to know?
Well, I think we're in a time that change is accelerating every year. And one of my big other mantras is assets are sexy, because I want people to remember it. So you trigger that concept. We are taught to exchange time for money. We're taught to work for a paycheck. And that doesn't move you forward. I want you to think about the momentum of your money. If you, instead of spending time, invest your time, just like what you're talking about. Your power of your environment is huge. Who are you spending time with? Are you investing your time in buying, building, creating assets? You are financially free when the income from your assets exceeds your monthly expenses. That means you don't have to get out of bed if you don't want to. All right. But they become your employees without personality problems. And nobody out there is teaching this. I
Hmm.
want people to start focusing on the power of assets, not the income. People want to know, well, how much money am I making? No, let's build the asset that becomes an economic engine that works for you 24/7. And that concept is what I shout from the mountaintops. And people, it's never been easier to start building assets because you don't need to have $100 million to start. You can do it with small amounts of money and start building that asset column so that you provide yourself financial relief and get your time back.
Driven. You've been driven your whole life, and you seem to still be driven and excited about being driven. I I put that driven with, I guess, a word, take an initiative, but it doesn't mean it's exactly the same. That's why they're different words. But a child that doesn't have initiative or is just glued to video games and they don't know what they don't know, of course. And what advice do you give to parents or even to adults that are blowing their time when either initiative or driven? How do you build that?
Well, I'll start by talking about the power of the question. Just like I said earlier about don't say, I can't afford it. Say, how can I afford it? Tell your children, how can you afford it? And, I have a whole thing on allowances. Like, allow your children to understand that they are part of the family. There's certain things they need to do for the family. Making their bed, brushing their teeth, things that they need to do for themselves. Don't pay them for that. Have them help out in the community, help the old lady next door take her garbage out. That you don't get paid for. But when you become creative and think about things you can do, let's clean out that extra closet in the garage, get compensated for it. And I think it's really important for children to have ownership of the decisions that they're making. I have a game called Thrive Time for Teens, and it teaches kids that it's important not only how they spend their money, but how they spend their time. Every decision they make either drives them towards success or not. And it's got a lot of humor in it, so the kids get entertained by it. But it's very important for kids to understand that they are the ones making the decision. Sometimes parents become dictatorial. I want parents to be mentors, not enablers. Big shift between those two words. And another thing about initiative is, when you see something, do you act on it? I tend to talk about my passion. When I get mad about something, I start another company. So a few years ago, when COVID hit, I was just overwhelmed by all the negativity. So I started another company, something called ATMs, Sharon's ATMs, Abundance, Tips, and Mentorship, a daily message of positivity. And I'm now closing in on 2,000 messages. But it's something that is my way of getting people into people's subconscious with a feeling of you're fabulous. And every one of them ends with, I'm saying you're fabulous. Say it with me. I am fabulous. Because we need more of that. We need that injection of positivity into our subconscious. All right. Or your subconscious is needy, and its need is going to be fit by what it finds. Is it negative or is it positive? Make it positive.
The pandemic brought that to you. And I'll say the same thing. My son did his first book because I said the world is in negativity right now. They need to laugh. And he made his first book called Kenny's Favorite Jokes. And he has 14 books now. But it's to your point, is if we had said, oh, this is horrible, and we bought into it, nothing gets created.
That's right. Fear paralyzes most of us. Fear either paralyzes or motivates. 99% of people are paralyzed by fear. I want to teach people how to turn their fear into fuel.
Mm.
And that fuel becomes focus, which turns into the energy to do something about it.
Yeah, fulfillment. To keep the F's going, I'll go with fulfillment. So I have 5 questions that I always ask my guest, and the elaboration is not necessary. You can elaborate a small amount, but it's called rapid fire, and I'm going to ask you 5 quick questions, and you can give very, very, very finite short answers. So, and if you, because you're so worldly, Sharon, if you say, well, I can't come up with one, you can give 2 or 3. There's no rules. Okay. So, what book changed your life?
Thank you, Gurich.
Amen. And I will say amen on that one. What movie inspires you?
Dancing with the Wolves.
I don't get that very often, so cool. What song gets you going, and or what group do you love?
Well, I love the song My Girl because my husband sings it to me all the time and he's got a fantastic voice. So that would be my song.
That's awesome. Who's your hero?
Well, my hero was my dad. He's been gone almost 20 years. Um, my hero today would probably be my husband.
Sounds like it. And what quote do you live by?
What's that? What quote do I live by? Oh my gosh. Um, I have lots of those, Ken, as you know. So assets are sexy is probably at the top of the list. But I also like people to challenge people. When was the last time you did something for the first time? Think about that. When was the last time you did something for the first time? Because when you do something, stepping outside your comfort zone, you trigger curiosity, you trigger creativity, and that's how you expand your world.
Well, I am blown away that this conversation yielded me so much more gold nuggets. My yellow pad is full, and I've heard you so many times. So for my yellow pad to get full yet again, it's just such a pleasure to talk with you and have a conversation that hopefully the audience. I'm going to have this for my son. My son will be listening to this. I think he's going to get a lot out of this. And
He's a lucky boy to have you as dad.
well, thank you. So, how do people connect with you? How do people follow you?
Thank you, Ken. SharonLechter.com, SharonLechter.com is my website. You can also sign up for my newsletter. It comes out every week. It's free. I'd love to have all of you join my community as well. I'm on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn, Sharon Lechter, and would welcome you to come on board.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Sharon, and look forward to seeing you at the next event.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you so much and have a blessed day.
Bye bye.